was we import the unit test, which is very important because that is the framework that we want to use in order to actually perform our unit test. The second thing that we did, which I don't want to talk about right now because I don't even know maybe we are going to use it or not until when I started working within my application, then that is the time I will know when we want to import something else or not. Okay, what I mean is this. Unit test is the first thing that I know that we need. So that is something that we already established when we started this course, that unit test is a must. This one I would do as if we don't need it. I don't know, maybe we're going to use it. So let's comment them out. So unit test is fine. I import that and I'll keep going because I don't know if this will be needed yet. I will only know if this will be needed based on what I want to achieve within my test or within my test cases. So this is one test case. This is another test case. We have two test cases here. And then it now depends on what I want to test. Then based on that, I can import some modules that will allow me to do my job correctly. But the most important one is the unit test. Now, I created a class. I call it test on temporary file. So it looks like what I want to achieve here is to test temporary file, to test a file that will exist temporarily. And in order for me to achieve this, since this is going to be a temporary file, okay, based on the knowledge I have, I realized that there is what we call temp file module, which can allow me to test temporary file. Then that is the time I know that I need to import temp file. Therefore, I import temp file. When I import that temp file, then I'll be able to use it. But most important thing for us is the unit test.test case, which we already discussed. Now, if you remember today, we talked about when you're writing your test, that the test needs to start with test underscore. But right here, we don't have that. And right here, we don't have that. This is basically explicit. This is different. So we need to understand what is going on here. But after these two, immediately we have that case. And other ones, we have the cases, as you can see here. The only one where we do not have it is this one and this one. So what is this and what is this? So let's try to understand what is a setup and what is a teardown in the aspect of a test. One of the reasons why we have to use a setup is just because if what you want to use will be repeated many times. What do I mean by that? Temp file, as you can see, is something that we are repeating, we are using in many places. I don't want you to get confused. Just relax and try to listen. You will understand what I'm saying. So again, if an object that you are creating will be used in many places, so this is an object of a temp file that we have created here. So here we can see that this is an object. We created that object, and this object will be used in many places in order to do things. We use it here, PAM, that is fine. And once we use it there, we also want to close it, PAM, that is also fine. Without doing this, I could have done something like this over here. I could have done something like that over here. And this will also serve my purpose. If I run the code, let's see what is going on here. Test runner and some other things are missing. For name, Yeah, so that is fine. The reason why this is failing is because of all this that we also commented out. So it couldn't find that. So let me just, for now, leave them and explain this one, then we get back to those ones. So here, I can see my temporary file test is running too, and this one also is running. So all the tests seems to be running and they are all passing. So just like I said, that could have served my purpose, and I saw that it's serving my purpose. So I could just bring that object creation down to this guy, but I did not bring it down to this guy. Okay, so what I will do is I will try to re-explain everything and for us to be able to understand it. So let's come down and follow along. Um, right here, we said that it is possible to skip our test, and we have some decorators that we can use, as you can see. And the first class that we are looking into is what we call test on temporary file. And that also needs to inherit the unit test case. So this becomes a test case. And since that becomes a test case, then we now have the test. This is the first test that we have under this one. And then we also have something we call a setup. So setup is basically something that we use to set up the objects that we will be using. And I said that we can do without this setup and tear down by just doing something like this, because that's the objects that we are setting up here. And I copy it down to here, and I can use it directly here. So the question now will be, what is the importance of setup? What is the purpose of setup? So the purpose of setup is pretty much simple and straightforward. So if you know that this object will be needed in many places, then there's no point to be creating that object in every of the tests that you are going to be writing. You can just set it up in one place and refer to that object anytime you need it. And this is what we are doing here. So we set up this file, temporary file, and anytime we need it, we just refer to it. So we can remove it from here. So which means that if we have another test, we can use another test, and we can also refer to this directly without repeating the same code within the test. So that is what the setup is going to be doing. So setup is going to set up your requirements. The purpose of a setup is for us to be able to set up the objects that we are going to be using many times within our test, for our test, within our test case. So this is my test case. So this setup, I use it to set up the temporary file. And this temporary file is something that I'm using here, right? So I did a setup here for the temporary file. And what is the importance of a teardown? A teardown means that once I am done with my writing into the temporary file, I want to close that file, because I don't want something else to write into that file, something else that is not my test file write. So immediately when I use my test file write to write, then I want to close it. So how will this run? What is going to happen here is this. The setup is going to run first. This is going to run second, and this is going to run last. As you can see, this seems to be the second one, but that is not going to follow that sequence. What is going to run first is the setup. Then what runs second is this one. And what goes last is the teardown, because teardown is closing a connection to the file. And you can't close a connection to a file before you work with that file. You have to finish working with that file. Once you are done working with that file, then you will close the connection to the file. And let me run this and you will see what I'm trying to say. So by running this code, as you can see, the setup is the first thing that is running. So here we can see that it's printing that, okay, from here, I'm the first one that is running, as you can see. And after that, the test file write is the second one that went. So which is the testing itself. And what is this doing? It says that I want to write something. They call it byte written. And it take the temporary file. Then from the temporary file, we have what we call the write function. So the write function, so let me show you. The write function is something that we can use to write into the temporary file. So temporary file dot. So right here, when I call dot, I can see all the things that are available to the temp file, which is an object that we have created using the temporary file module. And I can do temp file right here. So here we can see that, right? So now it's asking me, what do I want to write? So I want to write, let's say, for example, your name. I want to write your name here. And by writing your name here, or let's just say I want to write hello here. And hello, as you can see, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is 6. And this is what we are checking here, whether what we have written is equal to 6. And since that is true, then this is going to be true. All right, so we are going to stop here for today. And the next time we meet, we will continue from these points. See you then.